Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. Presented by Rogue Matter, we talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture with the rogues who create it every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter podcasts and streaming simultaneously on YouTube.com/Rogue Matter. Download this podcast immediately following the live stream on all major podcasting apps. Join the movement. Go Rogue, roguematter.com. I'm your host, Michael Dolce, as always, joined by my cohort in crime, the Lord of the Radio himself, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
Hey.
We are back in our isolated locations for this week, but we'll be back together in studio next week. It'll be very exciting.
Our undisclosed bunker of broadcasting.
Right. And we did it was like that, like when mass hysteria happens, but just the two of us. It's localized. It's just the two of us. It's matching red collared shirt day. Who knew? I didn't send a memo. I didn't get a memo. We just like we're psychically in tune. This is what happens. We get in the same room together. We come together dressed in the same shirt the next day, the next show.
I think it would have been more impactful if you had said nothing about it and we just acted like it was completely casual. But I understand.
Well, I get it. It was very. I mean, it was the first thing I was like when we did our little pre-show meeting. I'm like, hey, look at you. You look exactly like me. Like exactly, like we look exactly alike.
Exactly alike.
Like we're like twins, right?
Yes, now. It's very confusing to the audience. Exactly. Who's who? Who's doing the talking right now? Like I don't even get these two guys. Right. I understand.
So we got a lot to talk about today. We've got Indiana Jones set photos and Raiders of the Lost Ark turning 40, which we'll get to in another segment. We've got
painful
veteran Marvel and DC artist Jim Calafiore is the artist on Aquaman with Peter David, Exiles with Judd Winnick. He's got the second volume of his own creator-owned story, Ned, Lord of the Pit. On Kickstarter right now, you can actually go to nedlordofthepit.net and go right to the Kickstarter page. So just type that in and you can go right to the Kickstarter page to go support him. It's actually an awesome book. I support a lot of stuff on Kickstarter. I read a lot of stuff from Kickstarter. His was one of my favorite things I read all of last year in my pandemic Kickstarter reading. So I'm really excited. Right. Volume 2 is out and he's a friend of both of us. So I'm excited to have him on as well. But we will start today with the news of the day, the stream of the day, Loki, episode 1, dropping, debuting. For anybody who wants a little recap or catch up, this is going to be, there's just going to be spoilers. There's nothing we can really kind of do about that because it's we're going to describe some of the stuff in the show, but we'll keep it as spoiler free as we humanly possibly can. And we'll give you our reaction. We're gonna react to it in a new segment we call Board or On Board. Thank you, Steve Ovecki, for inspiring that one. So it's on Disney Plus. The series opens with a scene from Avengers Endgame, just to kind of give you guys the groundwork for it. If you haven't seen it, again,
this is weird to double up. That's a double up from. From Avengers Endgame is a double up from the first Avengers movie,
right?
So it's like you're going to double up on the double up, but,
right? It opens with them from the scene we've already seen from Avengers Endgame, but it's one of those like have you seen before kind of if you missed it, in case you missed it, kind of like openings to a lot of TV shows. So right. And it's very necessary, right? In that sense of just in case you haven't seen the biggest movie of the 2010s, and you're watching this coldly, it gives you that nice little recap. Earth's mightiest. What's that?
The nice, like overly convoluted, premise in and of itself.
Yeah.
Which I'm happy about to an extent that they hung a lantern on some of the contradictions.
Yep.
In the story, like Loki's like, wait a minute, didn't the Avengers just do an entire movie about time travel?
Thank God he said that. Yeah, and we can jump right to that as well too. I was just really going to give a quick little overview that it begins that Earth's mightiest heroes have time traveled back to the events of the first Avengers movie, bumped into the God of Mischief while he was still the scamp we first met all those years ago. This past Loki hasn't sought redemption for his villainy because that stuff hasn't happened yet. So in this, Loki scoops up a stray magical cube, the Tesseract, and uses it to escape. He sets the past on a different path. That brings him to the attention of a previously unseen agency of time cops, all set to wipe everyone's favorite demented deity from existence, unless he turns out to be the key to a time-bending threat that could rewrite the entire MCU. So that is the soup to nuts, synopsis of the series and this episode. Glad you brought that up, though, because that was one of the first things I was thinking about. After the initial 10, 15 minutes of it, it's all very fast paced, right? I mean, I'm never lost in any of what's happening, and I'm kind of in awe of everything because we're seeing it through Loki's eyes. Just like, look, this is a totally brand new thing. It's a brand new agency. Owen Wilson is the ringleader of said agency, and so it's kind of neat that we're experiencing this. But then as soon as he gets the one sequence where he has to wait in line, and you knew it was great when that guy didn't want to take that ticket, you're like, S is going to happen to that guy. Like, and it was great too. I mean, they made it a point to make him the villain of the day, which is the son of a wealthy, financial advising company, so he's a spoiled brat. You love seeing spoiled brats kind of get their comeuppance. You don't exactly know
someone else for it. He didn't give me a ticket. He refused to give me a ticket. Yeah.
It was great. It was great. He was a whiny little brat. And so it was kind of cool.
Well, also it kind of establishes Loki, even though he's obstinate, he's smart enough.
Yeah.
Let's just go with this. I'm just going to follow through with what you ask until I figure this place out so that I can, manipulate it to my advantage.
Yeah.
But without knowing what's going on, I can't. Any of my powers of manipulation are useless until I know what's happening. It's like we had to ask. I'm jumping around, but when he had to ask that guy, what's your name? And he said, he gave him his name, and then he threatened him. He goes, give me the Tesseract, or I'll gut you like a fish.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, what's a fish? Like, how do you not know what a fish is?
Right. Right.
But which that is kind of I will say about the episode in and of itself, because these episodes are really difficult, especially first episodes. They're establishing a lot. They don't have to establish Loki, but they do have to. They do have to establish the TVA, or the Time Variance agency or initiative.
Hang on, let me stop you for a split second there too, and I'll let you get back to your thought, because that's one of the things I actually was thinking about as I was watching this first episode. First episodes are really hard, and I thought to myself, this is a cool concept. It's very reminiscent of the Mainstream, my 2018 comic book that I had, but that's okay. It's okay. Can all have genius thoughts outside of it. If this was not Loki, right? If this was about the TVA, I mean, how much harder would it have been to actually have pulled this show off? It helps that we know Loki, that he's already been established. So it's like basically taking something we already know, and you have eliminated already half of the difficulty of setting something up that was completely new. So it had that on it. It was it's kind of cool, because this is something now that people keep asking, well, what's the future of the Marvel Universe? This could be the future of the Marvel Universe, taking established characters we've already grown to know and love and putting them in situations where, if this was a pilot episode, it might not be as successful. So anyway, continue. I apologize. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was gonna. I mean, the TVA is crap. It's a crap idea. It's unfortunately the kind of idea you come up with late in the development of your universe, where you establish that there's not only you establish the power in the first installments. If you establish the opposition to the power, usually around the same time as your first installment, and then you keep raising the stakes and raising the stakes and raising the stakes. Now we're at phase 4, and now they're taking us out of the stake. They're saying that there's a higher power even above the powers that have been fighting in general. So there's a higher power above Thanos. There's a higher power above above Loki, above all the villains that we've seen so far. I mean, Thanos is the optimum villain of the MCU so far, and he's
Right.
been defeated. So we need to establish new, nefarious actors and larger organizations. The problem with it is that if you have an omniscient order like that,
Mm-hmm.
then you're kind of, even if you're explaining how they kind of have to adhere to blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
you're also kind of eliminating the element of chance, the element of circumstance or whatever. And so you're kind of taking agency away from a lot of these, a lot of our main characters by saying, well, the Avengers were supposed to travel through time, which
Right,
is
and
why
that's
we
that's
didn't
how
do
they answer the
anything
question
about
for
it.
anybody who
Yeah.
hasn't seen it yet. They basically, because I thought
Well,
the
they
exact same
shouldn't be
thing.
listening to us if they haven't seen it yet.
That's true. That's a good point.
And so like the weird, it worked. They managed to do it also because of a quirkiness that the MCU has, thanks to Joss Whedon, thanks to some other people who have established it as sort of slightly to the left of serious, a little,
Right.
Serious, but a little tongue in cheek about the seriousness of all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a comedic episode establish, this time variance initiative or whatever they call it, that that basically monitors. You're talking about monitoring reality. They're about to do the same thing again with the Eternals, per the the trailers that we've seen, where they've basically stood by and watched the horrendous behaviors of all these, of these circumstances that have followed us for the last 10 years of the MCU. And I get it, but every time you're saying, yeah, there was a guy standing on the sidelines that he could have stopped it all, but he didn't because of this and that, you're messing ultimately with the impact of your narrative. Because every time the outside people go, well, how come? It's like Superman. They're like, how come Superman didn't stop 9/11? You know, like you got to come up with a reason for stuff like that. And once you realize, well, once you say something like he could have stopped it, but he was in Paris, or he was not feeling well that day, or he knew that he couldn't stop it because something else. Now you're like, all right, well, and that kind of cuts into his omniscience, and his agency. So it's a dangerous thing what they're doing, but they've done it so well that it doesn't matter. Like we're probably not going to care. But I think in the future, I can see people going, how come the time variance people didn't do anything about that,
Right. Well, they do answer it again. That was supposed to happen. Like their job is not to stop bad things from happening to good people. It's more about them just doing,
what's ruined
keeping everything
about
intact.
That is that the Sorcerer Supreme explained that every variance creates a new timeline, right?
Right.
So you can't really affect the timeline that you're in. Whatever you do creates a brand new branch of timeline. Now I understand that they want to stem the branches, they want to shut the branches down, but why? Like they did a poor job of explaining why, marrying all the, not
you didn't
having
like the little
multiverse.
animated 70s infomercial.
I'm sure they'll go deeper into it, but I mean, it was gish gallop. It was so convoluted that it seemed to make sense, but it really doesn't make any sense.
It's what I will say, and I don't entirely disagree with you at all with what you said there. What I will say though is I love the mishmash of what looks like 70s era tech with high tech at the same time. I thought that it adds a flavor to this show right off the bat that I'm kind of like intrigued by, and it's something where you see things like the film. It's like he's like playing microfilm on a holographic projector, like a hologram, like 3D projector. It's almost it's got a cool like mishmash of tech and things like that in it. I will say this, and I say this about all time travel stories. Ironically, I'm writing a time travel story. It's hard to keep things to where your head doesn't explode. It's a careful balance of just saying, you know what, let's just keep it surface level so that we don't have to think too hard. I'll go back and I'm on record. I don't love the fact that they did time travel as the mechanism to defeat Thanos in Avengers Endgame for this exact reason. I'm happy to have this show because I think that, Thomas Hiddleston is an amazing actor and he brings amazing life to this character. I love the little DB Cooper reference in the first episode. And in a way, I'm kind of relieved at the fact that what we had seen in the trailers, which turned out to be trailer trash, not trailer truth, wasn't actually, it has no bearing on the stakes of what we were about to watch. Because when I watched the trailer originally, I was like, oh man, are they going to send him through time to just fix some sort of massive issue? And they still might, because obviously the main antagonist of this is someone that is interfering with the time stream and the timeline itself. And they're going to enlist Loki's aid to defeat.
This shouldn't be able to happen.
Well, we don't know yet, right?
No, according to Avengers, it shouldn't be able to happen because they're creating new timelines.
Correct.
Right? But if they can't catch the guy, then who they suggest is also Loki. Right? If they can't catch him, then that means that they're unsuccessful at stemming that branch of the timeline.
Right.
But if they have another Loki there who's apparently also stepped out of the timeline somehow,
right,
it just kind of cancels itself out.
Well, it's going to be interesting because it's going to end up being the Loki we're watching. I mean, it's got to be, right? I mean, that's the only explanation that because how else would he be able to avoid the the time variance, such not the timekeeper. The keepers were in the mainstream.
Well, then it doesn't quite make any sense, because if he's that much of a menace, then why not stop him there?
Right. I don't. Well, maybe that's why.
I know.
Maybe that's why Owen Wilson was trying to get to the root of the problem. Maybe he's actually trying, and that's where I'm. Maybe it's again the fact that we're so used to these things now and these kind of stories that already I'm suspecting. Well, if everything is supposed to happen, then even why is Owen Wilson surprised that Loki pulled that thing out of his glove? Yeah, that's got to be planned also in a sense. I'm
not really twisted up as a pretzel about the events in the story, because I've said 100 times, I don't get into the business of speculating what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. I'm just talking about the dangers of this in narration. If you have an omniscient power that's constantly monitoring these things, and it's supposed to be like this really intricate bureaucratic machine that does these things, and it's just not the first time we've seen that either.
No, sure.
I mean, even the Umbrella Academy has this kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So and it's done in the same way.
It's actually exactly the same.
There's something machine.
Something I was thinking about that also, because it's kind of like, hey, we're really fans of Umbrella Academy. Let's do something in the MCU like that. And it's not plagiarizing in the same sense, because it's Loki. It's not, but the Umbrella Academy, same thing. It's not the Umbrella Academy. It's, go ahead. You're right.
We don't know. I mean, I'm just saying it's not it's fine. Now, see, the thing is, the premise of the Umbrella Academy is that, is time that they started with that, that there are various timelines, and that they're trying to correct whatever mistakes these guys. And in the meantime, you've got the super family, superpowers team that are trying to correct the reality of the situation, while these people behind the scenes are trying to correct the timeline in and of itself. And that's basically the Umbrella Academy in and of itself. But I'm just saying it's dangerous.
Yes,
it's very dangerous to the delicate tapestry that is the MCU and in the first place, right?
Yes,
it's like you'll watch Shang-Chi and something terrible will happen. It was about to happen. You're like, well, if they screw this up, they could still use the TVA, and regardless of
it's
what.
It's both a problem and a solution, right? Because it's a solution to the fact that actors are going to get older. They're going to have to reinvent it. They already reinvented Captain America in one way, but they're going to have to reinvent these characters, even in comics, right? Like at some point, Steve Rogers comes back, and Steve Rogers might come back and not be Chris Evans. And you've got to explain that. Chadwick Boseman tragically passed, and Black Panther 2, apparently is not going to recast him, but that doesn't mean that they can't close the door to recasting him later on. And maybe the multiverse event is a way to also, hey, we can bring back T'Challa and still honor Chadwick Boseman by, we're not eliminating what he did. There was the Ultimate Universe in comics was the retelling in modern times of Spider-Man and X-Men and Avengers and all these characters. And it was a parallel timeline. It was another universe. So it solves those problems. But like you said, yes, it creates more problems if you've been around for a while. But as we've seen many times before, we don't count anymore. They've already got us. They got to worry about, okay, those 10-year-olds growing up and those 5-year-olds, people like my son, how are they going to come in? Because that's a big problem with the MCU in general, right? Is the shared universe storytelling is phenomenal for someone who gets in at ground zero. It's phenomenal for people who like us read in the 90s and could just go to our comic book store and read the back issues, and they kept very careful integrity of that continuity so that we could just kind of branch back and reread it. It becomes a mess 30 years later when you have that next crop of people trying to like keep up. So I see what you're saying. I just, I'm not sure how else to address it except the way they're doing it right now.
Okay.
Right? I don't know. That's the one thing. All right.
All problems are avoidable, and that's in and of itself. You've made I remember like the argument about Kylo Ren being able to beat Rey, right?
Yeah.
And so they install the fact that he got shot with Chewbacca's crossbow.
Right. He was injured. Right.
Yeah. And then they went out of their way to show that crossbow was pretty much a melee weapon throughout the in the beginning, the first 2 acts of the film.
Right.
He would fire it and stormtroopers would scatter in all directions, which that didn't really ever happen before. No. Whatever, who cares, right? Maybe he upgraded in the 20 to 30 years between the Return of the Jedi and Force Fruit. But and so the logic was, well, he was wounded, and that's why Rey was able to beat him.
Right.
But you wrote that Rey was able to beat him, and then you had to write your way out of that by wounding him, and then you had to go back and show what significance the damage that weapon could do. And so you just when you keep trying to bend the reason to the outcome instead of the outcome versus the reason, right? You're always going to be doing a level of intricate patchwork and running and gunning and repairing as you go forward.
But are you asking this? And let me ask you a question. Are you saying this in terms of? I know you're not asking that. I'm asking. Are you asking me? No. Do you basically actually use that as a verb when I chop wood? Now I ask things. Are you saying this in terms of the MCU or just this show in general?
All I'm talking about is the dangers of introducing something like that into your narrative. Okay. I'm actually not even making a comment on Loki in and of itself. I'm just talking in general of retroactively putting a stopgap in these things, and to explain that there's a higher power at work that was overseeing everything that you're doing. Because when you take agency away from which Loki does address, he's like, well, wait a minute, like I've done this all because I wanted to. It's like, no, you did it all because you were supposed to. Yeah, I get that, and it's a ooh-ah, it's a good ooh-ah moment for the moment, but they're if they don't do it right, which there's no reason to doubt that they will screw it up. There's no reason to doubt them because they've done, a bang up job all the way up to now. But if they don't do it right, they can destroy their whole universe. I know it's hyperbolic, but they actually can destroy the integrity of their entire universe.
Well, that's something else that I read, and I think to your point is actually kind of daring about Loki versus, say, WandaVision or say Falcon and Winter Soldier. Although Falcon and Winter Soldier does impact the MCU and WandaVision does impact the MCU. This, however, could be the greatest impact on the MCU. True or false? Or
I
have the
just said
greatest
that.
segue?
I just spent the last 20 minutes saying that. Like, if they don't do it correctly,
Over the other two
definitely
shows is my
can.
point. Over the other two shows is my question.
Nah, I'm not going to compare them. I
Okay.
don't know yet. I have no idea yet.
Okay. Great segue as we wrap up the segment. Bored or on board? So one of the things that I criticized Falcon and Winter Soldier for is that it was basically boring. I mean, it was really boring. Those first 3 episodes were boring and weird.
Everybody
and
I've talked to has vehemently disagrees with you on
that's
that.
okay. I don't mind being right where everyone else is incorrect.
Yeah, yeah.
The first 2 episodes, at the very least, was very,
except
to me,
for this time,
very boring. Very like, if this was not the MCU and it was not my job to talk about it and it was not in the realm of things that we want to talk about.
That's a lot of ifs, you know, like if you have to go back with 10 ifs just to
well, it was to justify me watching. Yes, to justify. If you had said to me, hey, go watch the show because you might like it, I'd watch the first episode and be like, man, that really wasn't very good. I probably
do that for things that
maybe I'll watch the second one and then I watch the second one and go, man, this show's not very good. I'm done. Like I would have been out.
Yeah, right? But I mean, like if you were like a dedicated consumer of content in and of itself, that might have more impact. But stuff that you say you do like, you don't even watch. So I mean, you know, there is that. There's that fact.
There's a level of truth to what you're saying. However, I would not
total truth to what I'm saying.
So Ozark, which I'm almost done with.
Finish the Ozark.
I'm almost done with it. I'm almost done with it. Yeah. I'm not
you started that 4 months ago.
Yes, I know. I know. I'm not watching it though because it's not good. I have to be in the right mindset to watch it because it's gritty and I can't take all the dying. But not in the sense of like I don't want it to be there. I just need to be mentally. I need to be mentally ready for it.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Binging that show is tough for me. It was just tough. Like I loved going through season 2, but I needed a respite. Like I got through season 2 and I was like, well, I got to find out what happens. And then by season 3, I'm like, man, more people are going to die. I need to wait this one out a little bit. I need to recharge before I go into it.
All I'm saying is like, if you're not a voracious consumer of content and therefore the fact that you did not like something or you did find something boring it's even worse. It's
even worse for it. It's even worse for it. Because I'm sitting there going, well, I could watch Invincible or I could watch Falcon and Winter Soldier.
It's worse for you. If you told me, well, I kind of didn't even watch this, I'd be like, well, you don't watch anything. So that doesn't impact my attitude as to whether or not I should watch it. That's what I mean. When I'm referring to you, I'm referring to your impact. The impact that you're leaving, not you yourself. Of course, you yourself have decided, that you're not going to watch it. You're totally entitled to that. I'm just saying, like, what gets your word on it?
My reaction to things, though, are, boy, I really do want to watch this, or I don't, or I'm bored. Meaning that, despite whether or not I actually end up watching it, is the feeling I take away from it. So,
or you got to deal with the kids.
I'm going to go bored or on board.
It's getting in the way of you watching Oak Island. I mean, there's a lot of reasons you've given me.
And I'm waiting for my wife to finish watching the last 2 episodes of that, though, because we watched that together.
Yeah, see that. That has immediate impact.
I'm into the food that built America now. That's a great show on history.
Yeah, see, that's exactly what I mean.
Check out that one. That's
exactly what I mean.
That's a solid one. All right, let me throw this out though. Are you, after 1 episode, bored or on board with this series? Not because you have to watch it, but because it's something that you're sitting there going, man, I can't wait for the next one to come out.
I don't get bored with these things.
Okay.
There are either things I want to see that interest me, in which case I'll go see it, or things I don't want to see.
Mm-hmm.
In which case I probably won't see it unless I am cajoled into seeing it somehow.
That's right.
So no, I don't get bored. Bored and on board's not really going to yield the results that you want for me, because I'm never really bored. It's one of the weird phenomenons of being me. I've actually never been bored.
Interesting. You've never been bored? Like you've never sat through a movie and then like halfway through you're like, man, this is boring.
You know what? Just last night I sat through a movie that I thought was probably, one of the worst movies I've seen in a long time. It was very poorly paced and it had the nerve of being 2.5 hours.
Uh-huh.
But I wasn't bored. I was annoyed at the way the movie was constructed.
Interesting.
And the dalliance that it took, the leisurely
what movie was it?
Pace with it. I'm not gonna talk about which movie it was.
All right. Well, I'm gonna shroud that in mystery, and we'll get it at a later segment. I am totally on board with Loki. they answered enough questions for me to feel as if
well, okay, what I mean is if I'm watching it, I'm already on board. If I sat down to watch the pilot to Loki, I'm already on board. If I didn't like it, then I'd be like, I don't like this. I'm not going to continue it. But I wouldn't stop watching it because I was bored. Now I know bored or on board is another one of your clever, the cleverly titled segments. I get it. I'm just letting you know. Every week, I'm going to keep reminding you I don't get bored, so I don't understand. I don't understand the parameters of this segment, but I do get it. I understand what you mean. I'm just going to pretend I don't get it. I'm just preparing you for that.
Okay.
Are you prepared for that?
So I'm on board. I was not bored. If this was Falcon and Winter Soldier, we were playing bored and on board, I'd be like, I'm bored.
And you still watched it. That's what the level of your.
We had to. We're reviewing it every week because it was what everyone was talking about. So
I know, but I mean, like, how can anybody really believe anything you're saying?
Because I'm very honest about it. I'm very honest and forthright about it.
But you go against your principles.
No. Well, yes, I get paid for it. Yes. It is. I go against the, not the principles. It has nothing to do with principles. I get paid to watch this stuff. And it's like, all right, if I have to watch it, I'll watch it. But if there was no monetary compensation, I'm out. But not in the case of Loki. They answered enough questions for me that I had. Time travel can be such a mind bender to begin with. They handled it well enough that I'm willing to go along for this ride.
It's not a mind bender per the MCU because my MCU just keeps changing the rules whenever they want to about it.
And
at one point it's important, and the next point it's not really important.
I accept it.
Like the Hulk just throws a throwaway line: "You can't go back to your past to change your future because the past is your future." Get it? Huh? Wink, wink, wink. Marty McFly. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's better. Time travel is always better when you actually have rules, no matter how absurd the rules are. But when you keep changing the rules, it just doesn't matter.
What do you guys think? Comment in the Facebook feed and the YouTube links and the YouTube comments. We will write back to you. When we come back, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark turns 40. And Hassan's got some rogue rage about it when we come back. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. Okay, we do this whenever Hassan has anything that he likes to bring to the table. It can be negative, it can be positive, but it's all the rage in the pop culture universe. We call this segment Hassan's Rogue Rage. Take it away, first chair.
He's such a jerk. I swear to God. We are at the 40th anniversary of Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981. Right? In June of 1981. I think it's June. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. No, it is. I think it's today, actually.
That's
I'll go to the Google.
That's exceptionally prescient of us. But anyway, so last night, because I've been in lockdown, I've been in a lockier lockdown than most people. I've been reluctant to go to many places. I have not been to the a movie theater since January 2020.
Yeah.
And I saw I think I saw 1917.
Okay.
It's the last movie I saw.
Yeah. Wow.
So a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, who I grew up with, called me at the last minute, said we got to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark in the at Union Square tomorrow.
You beat me to the theaters.
I did, and I didn't want to.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, but it is once in a what did I say? Once in a 40-year experience, right. And there was no choice really to think about it. And I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark a million times, but I do remember there's one incident where I went with a bunch of friends to see Ghostbusters.
Okay.
In the theater. It was about maybe 5 years ago. And I, of course, who hasn't seen Ghostbusters? And I saw it when it came out. I'm that old when it was 1984 when it first came out. But and I thought it was like, okay, that'll be just something for us to sit down and do, and that'll be kind of cute. We'll watch it in the theater and we'll get over it. I had a blast. It was it was a ball, like watching that movie in a big screen with a whole audience full of people who were there for the same reason, who knew the film inside out and were just there to experience it. So, there's people calling out lines and people laughing before a joke because they're laughing because they know a joke is coming, that kind of thing. So Raiders of the Lost Ark wasn't all that different. It was a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that got me in the rage was the element of spectacle that Raiders of the Lost Ark had. There is a signature style element to Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's immediately stylized. It's also immediately, and I don't know if I described this correctly, it's immediately a heavy movie. Like, that there's heavy stuff going on. It feels enormous. It feels like a giant film. Even though, there's a guy in a fedora with a leather jacket in the middle of the jungle who you don't see his face until maybe 7 to 8 minutes in. And Dr. Octopus and this other guy are following him around because Alfred Molina, that's Alfred Molina's first role, I do believe.
Yeah.
And he's, they're following around, they're plotting against him, not very quietly. And, he did. That's the first time you get to see the signature bullwhip, signature everything. Indiana Jones just comes into our lives. Raiders of the Lost Ark is not my favorite Indiana Jones movie. It is the best Indiana Jones movie. My favorite is The Temple of Doom.
Your Temple of Doom guy. Oh, see, I would have thought Last Crusade. You strike me as a Last Crusade guy. If Raiders was not your favorite,
I didn't honestly like Last Crusade when I first saw it. I thought it was good, but I thought it was very down to earth. Someone recently did kind of a retrospective on the Indiana Jones films, and it seemed like Last Crusade was basically, in their assessment, and I agree with this, it was overly correcting everything that they thought was not good about the Temple of Doom, right?
Yeah.
So it was almost like an apology movie for the Temple of Doom. So it's very apparent in that it plays it really safe. Last Crusade plays it really safe. I love it. It's a great movie. It's a fantastic movie. It's got some great stuff in it. I don't have a problem with it. I love every Indiana Jones movie, including Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I don't care what anybody says about it. I love them all. I hopefully will love the fifth one that has just started this week. But Temple of Doom was my favorite. Now, I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably the greatest action movie as we have come to know the action genre. I think it's the precursor action movie to what became the modern standard in the 80s with Schwarzenegger and Stallone, and then later Bruce Willis.
Yep.
But it's also one of the most artistically, stylized movies I've seen in a long time. And I didn't realize it until watching it yesterday, again, in the big screen. There's a lot. Spielberg does a ton of stuff with silhouettes. He does a ton of action, kind of just to the left of camera.
Yeah,
just slightly off camera. There's a bunch of anachronistic things that don't make any sense but make perfect sense.
Yeah.
For Raiders of the Lost Ark, like you're trying to kill this guy. This guy comes out of nowhere. He starts shooting at you and your men. Your guys are beating him up. Then one of them slams his head on a bar, and you decide to send a fire trail down the bar instead of shooting him.
Right.
You set the bar on fire with the hopes that you're going to burn the guy. It's just ridiculous, but it's fantastic. It looks great.
It works. It always works.
And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, we don't have movies like this anymore. I know this is the curmudgeon get off my lawn kind of commentary, but
that lawn needs to get gotten off. Damn it.
But, yes. Say the hell off this damn lawn. It's not, movies today they don't have weight to them. They don't feel heavy. They don't feel like giant events. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed watching Endgame.
Yeah.
2 years already. 2 years ago. My God.
Oh, we had a lost year last year.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed watching Endgame. I enjoyed Infinity War.
Yeah.
I thought they were both great movies. There's not a lot of style in those movies. because those movies don't have to bend too much. They can just pretty much do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So of course you'll get a fantastic set piece at the end of Endgame where every single MCU character is on a field having like a Braveheart style battle with all of Thanos' people, and it's amazing. But something about it doesn't have the weight of those old 80s.
Well, let me ask you a question. This is a get off my lawn question, but do you think you feel that way either A, because of everything when you're a kid is seems bigger, or B, we just have so much content now that and special effects have come so far. I mean, look what they do in Loki. Look what they do in other, in TV shows now, just in general, that the fact that in 1981 there was just nothing like this out there lends to your opinion?
It's look, if you're going to be logical, it has to be a little bit of both, right? It's of course who I was and what I was doing when I first experienced this movie. But as a piece of truth, I didn't really like Raiders of the Lost Ark when I saw it. I was 7 years old. Right. It was, I understood the action and adventure stuff, but I didn't understand, all the biblical stuff that they were talking about. I didn't understand. And there was a lot of gore in it. It's a violent movie. It's a heck of a violent movie for 19. Well, yeah, but I mean for 1981, it's a violent. The whole movie is violent. The whole movie is blood splatters and people going off cliffs and people getting run over by trucks and that kind of thing. It's a heavy movie for a 7-year-old. It's a very violent movie. It's violent compared to what Spielberg had become known for in the latter years of the 80s and the early 90s, where he was almost more of a family-oriented director. He made family material. He makes E.T., he makes, Hook, he makes these, AI, all these movies that are kind of have this really hallmarky, the warm down home feeling to them. His experimental days are past him. His, Jaws and Poltergeist, which he produced, and Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Indiana Jones film, and then he just kind of takes a family feel after that. Yeah. Until Munich, then he starts to get heavy again. He starts to get stylized again. And it's like I love Spielberg's work, but I think just there's something about those movies that are enormous. They feel enormous, as you say, maybe because I was a small 7-year-old, but also when I watched it yesterday, I felt the enormity. You felt it though, yeah. Right away, right as I'm watching it. Also the style. Watch the movie again. Just watch the stylized way in which he does action sequences. Yeah. He leans on it very heavy. He does a lot of silhouettes. There's a lot of people getting punched in silhouette against the wall, that so you don't actually see the action. But it works, man. The whole thing works. It's amazing. There are problems with the movie, as people have said. Peter David said very famously that that the last act of the movie, Indiana Jones, has like absolutely no agency whatsoever. He just kind of goes along. There's also if Indiana Jones wasn't part of the movie, the Nazis still would have died at the end. Yes, exactly. Kind of thing too. And my friend said, when we were eating dinner afterwards, he said, when you're in your, I think he's in his 50s now. Actually, we said when you're in your 50s, it starts to hit you like, hey, how did they get off that island? If all the Nazis got killed, like did they Indiana Jones can't fly a plane, and they're like, did they pilot the submarine out of there? Like, how did they get you don't ever think about stuff like that though. They got out. My attitude is they got a radio and they called for OA. There you go. OES. That's a simple explanation. Yes, that works. But the rage is that there's a style to movies. Yeah, modern movies, no matter how big they are, how big set pieces they are, how big events they are, they just don't have the feeling of weight to them that the older movies did. And then, yes, that could totally be about nostalgia. No, the young kids can't experience it. Then too bad. It's good to be older. With that,
We will close Rogue Rage for this week. What do you guys think? Will there ever be another movie like Indiana Jones? Indiana Jones 5 is coming out. I'm cautiously optimistic.
You can't call it Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can't do it. You'll be pilloried. So it's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
The others are Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help you.
Will there be another Raiders of the Lost Ark ever in our lifetime? Are we just curmudgeon-y old guys? The answer is probably. When we come back, we've got veteran artist Jim Calafiore. He's going to be joining us talking Kickstarter. He's got a new book coming out, Ned, Lord of the Pit, Volume 2. It's a great book. If you haven't read Volume 1, I highly suggest that you go on right now, back his Kickstarter at nedlordofthepit.net. And then this way you'll be able to catch right up for this interview, which is coming up next. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. Happy to be joined by a good friend of the show, good friend of us, Mr. Jim Calafiore, veteran artist, Exiles, Aquaman, Leaving Megalopolis. He's been, I actually, Jim, aside from actually knowing you from the football field way back in the day, I knew of your work from the Valiant days doing Exo Manowar. You were always one of my favorite artists back then. So it was always very cool to eventually then meet you. And then we became friends. You did a lot of the stuff for Sire. You did the Sire Volume 1 trade paperback cover, Sire Volume 2 trade paperback cover, and the upcoming trade paperback for 3, which I have to finish. The fun part about drawing your own book. So talk to us about that. You are doing Ed. What's that?
You're going to tell me you were like 14 when you first saw my stuff, right?
Oh, man, let's not do that. Don't do it.
Probably 12.
I had a creator on a panel, a girl, and I was mentioning something, and she goes, "I wasn't even born yet." I'm like, "I'll just twist that knife, thank you."
Well, I was in my 20s when I met you, Jim. So at least there's that. I was already an adult. So
you could get into R-rated movies. He could.
Yes.
No, I couldn't.
I was able to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael.
Well, I mean, hey, Jim, you could have been 11 years old toiling away at Exo Manowar. You never know.
That's it. Yeah, I'm a prodigy.
So talk to us about Ned, Lord of the Pit. It's a creator-owned book. It's a book that is this your first foray into writing aside from Exiles?
No. I've been writing since the beginning. I started out at Caliber Press, which was a small independent publisher back in the 80s, late 80s. They had a lot of good people came out of there. The Crow was published there. So Jim Abar came out of there. Bendis came out of there. Mike Lark came out of there.
Yeah.
Guy Davis came out of there. Phil Hester. A lot of people worked for them. And I wrote everything myself there. Then basically I moved up to the big time with Valiant. And I wrote sporadically. I plotted a little bit. I think my next published writing wasn't till Exiles at Marvel.
Well, I remember, that's how I know you from being a writer, was Exiles. In Valiant, and I was pretty keen on that. I don't remember you getting the writing credit if you did. That, but all right. So maybe my 12-year-old brain did not calculate that, but it's exciting though. So Exiles, I remember you were on hand to create, what was it, Blink, right? That's like the big.
No, Nocturne.
Nocturne. Okay. Yeah.
Nocturne was created in a book called X-Men Millennial Visions. They had a pinup book where they had creators do their version of the X-Men.
Okay.
Like in 25 years, because it was the 25th anniversary. And so I did this group of X-Men now, and it was Nocturne was Nightcrawler's daughter. I basically did things that I figured Claremont would do. A member of the team was Armageddon, who was Apocalypse's son, so like the villain's son on the team, the son of one of the heroes on the team, like that. And what originally Exiles was supposed to be was going to be an anthology series based on any of those pinups, one after another.
Yeah.
Having the creators do those pinups. But when Judd came on board, I guess he turned it into this team alternate reality book. And the only character that made it out of X-Men Millennial Visions was Nocturne, which was cool. And then I did 2 issues of Exiles, 41 and 42, or 42 and 43, which was her backstory. So it was basically a longer version of the text piece I had written for Millennial Visions. Excuse me. And then I did a little plotting on Aquaman with Peter David. And then I wrote an issue of Green Arrow that I didn't draw.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that was Judd was doing it. He was taking an issues break, and he just recommended me to Shrek, who was the editor at the time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I didn't know that about the DC stuff about plotting and things like that. But here's the honest truth, though, right? And I told Hassan this at the beginning of the show. I did a lot of kickstarting. I backed a lot of Kickstarters last year. Yours was my favorite book that I read. Really? Out of all the Kickstarters I backed. No joke about that. I really, I remember reading it too and just being very impressed with, and again, I knew you had written stuff at Marvel, but again, I know you as an artist, and that's sometimes a tough, brand perception to kind of escape from. And I just remember being engrossed in the storyline, immediately. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm reading Jim who's trying out writing now, or Jim, the artist who's also now doing writing. It was, I'm engrossed in what's happening in this book right now. So kudos to you on that.
Excellent.
And excited for the next volume. So tell folks who might not know what Ned Lord of the Pit is all about the book.
Well, Ned Lord of the Pit is a supernatural horror comedy. The line I keep saying is you can tell somebody named Ned should never be a Lord of the Pit. He's just a regular guy who's got enough problems with his girlfriend and his career as a failing actor, who finds out upon the death of his brother, his older brother, that his family is connected to hell. His father, in essence, is the lord of a pit in hell, one of 7 lords of sections in hell. And since he is now the eldest, he's the next in line. And that comes along with a whole host of problems. The first of which is before he finds out what's going on, he starts seeing demons walking around the street. Mm-hmm. Nobody else can see them, and he has no idea what's going on. He pretty much assumes he has a brain tumor. And that's contained in the first volume. There's a lot of issues going on. There's a lot of forces. He wants out. He wants out of this inheritance. He wants nothing to do with his father or his family. They're estranged. He wants out. There's darker forces and some good forces. We also visit heaven at one point that will pretty much want to help him get out permanently. And that was basically the first volume was kickstarted, and I shipped around March or February of this year. And now I have the Kickstarter for volume 2. And I've made the pledge level so anybody who misses it, they can, who missed the first one, there's levels to get volume 1 and volume 2 together. And there's even a volume for just a pledge level for just volume 1 if they want to get that.
Oh, that's nice. And
there's a lot of add-ons, which is nice. Kickstarter's added add-ons now that you can add on extra books, or somebody can get this, but still get the head sketch that I do inside the book. That's
sure.
Like $50, they get a nice head sketch inside the book. They can add that on any level. And basically the storyline in volume 2 completes the first major arc that was begun in volume 1. And in volume 2, volume 1, everything happened really fast.
Yeah.
He had trouble catching up, so it was happening to him. Yeah. In volume 2, now he's taking control. He's going to find a way out. And
it's funny you mentioned that. That was one of my favorite parts about volume 1, though, was the fact that he has these powers, but he kind of doesn't know he has these powers. So things like when he's taking his audition and he kills everyone in the audition room by mistake because he's like, he was trying to eliminate his competition and they got eliminated. And then his best friend, his rival, who now is now become, I guess in a way, his only best friend or his only confidant, who's now a zombie. And I like the little twist that you did as well too, where basically he learns he's like, he kind of screwed him over now. He can't go to heaven. He's basically stuck as a zombie the entire time. And he's kind of like living in his closet. And, I don't know, there were a lot of like little things where I feel like you put a twist on, the heaven and hell backdrop that we see in a lot of these, kind of stories.
Yeah, it comes along with, it's funny. It's Louise Simonson wrote the introduction for Volume 1. And she was very nice. And she said in an email that I was doing nice world building.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that just kind of layers on as you're going. You're like, oh, wait, I can't do that because I said you couldn't do that over here. So I have to always adjust. But my favorite bit in the book is when Zombie Gerard is looking for a spoon in the drawer because he wants to eat his brain.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of like little nuance in this that I think is overlooked in a lot of ways. And I think that is one of the things that transformed me from, again, seeing you as Jim, the artist that I know, into Jim, the writer. Did you have any challenges while writing this? Was this something that I feel like this was one of those things where you were very inspired and it just kind of came out, or did you hit like roadblocks in the way, in the writing?
Well, one of the things, and this, being your own editor in essence, it's really freeing. And especially when it comes to comedy. Comedy really is about the beats.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's about a beat panel, that moment where you're just on the guy and the joke lands.
Yeah.
There's no editor telling me, okay, wait, can you make that 5 pages shorter? Can you fit this into that? Wait, that gag's too long. So that's the great part about it. So it is very inspiring.
Yeah.
I don't think I really hit any roadblocks in the story as I was going. I mean, the nice thing about doing it yourself and having, in essence, an extended deadline, tweaking the dialogue constantly. I'm sort of obsessed with meter and rhythm.
Yeah.
I keep trying to get that into a perfect area. The only thing I realized with the first volume, and it would have been structured a little differently if it had been floppies, 20-page floppies. Everything's structured a little differently than I would have done as a regular series. There's things in Volume 2 that I would introduce in Volume 1. But Volume 1 had to have some sort of self-containment to it.
Yeah. And
I realized you've read the book. I realized I shorted his girlfriend.
Right.
That's why I did a 6-page backup with just her.
Yeah.
To try and give her a little more roundness. And then she's got hopefully more in Volume 2.
Very cool. This isn't your first Kickstarter, your first foray. You worked with Gail Simone on Leaving Megalopolis. However, this, I believe, is your first Kickstarter where you're just that. This is it. This is just Jim running the show, right?
I had one smaller one before that. On my website, I have a gag strip called Crooks and Nannies, which is a single panel gag strip. I started it 7 years ago. It ran for about 5 years, every Friday, a new gag strip. And the first 2 years, I'd actually done a small Kickstarter for that. So I made a little collection of those gags. So it was me running it all. But when it came with Megalopolis, I was running everything.
Okay.
I mean, she may have been writing it, but I ran the entire campaign and the shipping and the fulfillment and all that.
Tell everyone out there how challenging or not challenging that is. I tend to always get the answer being the first part, but talk to folks about, who might want to put together a Kickstarter, like, what they're actually signing up for when they do this.
It's a lot of work, but it's yours, and this. I would do anything for it. So it's never that horrible of a job. We had about 5,000 backers on Megalopolis. I stuffed every single envelope with a group of people. We actually set up in a warehouse and made my friend's has a workshop. He set up in his warehouse. We made a assembly line and just bag stuff, label, bag stuff, label. The biggest problem was mailing.
Yeah.
Just getting them to the post office and getting them out.
Yeah.
And I had to arrange with my post office, which ended up working out really well. And I know the people at the post office. Basically, I would drop books off, hundreds of books on the landing, on the loading dock in the morning. leave them my credit card. They'd run them all, call me when it
Wow.
was done. Because originally I was walking in with boxes.
Yes.
Boom. And I said, is there some way to do this? And they're like, no. I said, okay, I'll stand here for 3 hours while you're running one by one. And the worst thing that happened was in that beginning, before we worked out me dropping them off, the person behind the counter did almost 3/4 of what I had brought.
Yeah.
And she hit the wrong button. And the button was delete. And it just doesn't delete.
Oh no.
The tape has to print out every single deletion. So for like 20 minutes, it was murder. But it's like I said, I'll
The
I'll do anything
unglamorous
for it.
side of Kickstarter. That
Well,
they don't
yeah,
tell
no,
you about.
these are things people kind of have to know.
Yeah.
I'd say the biggest thing for anybody who's going to do a Kickstarter is be smart about your rewards, because it always seems cool to do things like, oh, a mug would be cool. But if you only get 2 people taking the mug, you still have a minimum you have to print.
Yeah. Then
you have to ship it separately. It's nice to do things that fit right in the book, can be shipped with the book. But the fulfillment, it was a haul, but it was worth it because you own it. It's all yours.
Yeah, no, there's definitely something that, in terms of the creator-owned book versus working for the big two, likes, dislikes, preference.
Well, it's a lot more tenuous working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously more rewarding. It always is. It'll always be doing your own thing for people who want to do their own thing. I know there's people who really don't. But it's a lot more rewarding. You just don't get to work on Superman or Batman or these characters you grew up with, but you're creating your own worlds.
And what would you what would you recommend to somebody nowadays? Is it that much easier to just kind of do the stuff on your own? Because I mean, you had an audience, you had a following from people that followed you for a while, so you had an advantage in that way. But at a disadvantage of it was just as competitive when you were breaking in. I mean, it's not something that necessarily was handed to you either. I mean, so knowing the technology today, would you recommend people kind of go the big two route or take it right to Kickstarter right to begin with?
Well, the big two was a little tough. You know that it's little insular. Breaking in is tough, especially for writers. Writers is really tough because you don't have anything.
Right.
You're looking to write. It's just get anything out there, and you don't have to go to Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
You can publish digitally.
Yeah.
You can do your own digital books and have them up on Comixology.
Yep.
Or if you have a website, you can have a digital book on the website, getting something out there. In terms of doing something that is really near and dear to your heart, try Kickstarter. There's lots of different ways to publish. There's lots of different price points, lots of different goals that are achievable, especially if you have a lot of family. Get Cousin Bob to buy a book.
That's right. You know what's funny? I never liked that originally because I was like, well, I don't want to ask my friends and family, but it turns out like they want to support. Like they actually, might get upset if you don't ask them. Like, hey, why didn't you? I love your stuff. Like, why wouldn't I? So it's interesting in a lot of ways how Kickstarter has kind of like not only revolutionized the industry, but just revolutionized like how we may think, or at least how I thought about, kind of branching out and the people that would be interested in your stuff that you might not realize.
I had the advantage that, like you said, I had already been working in the industry for 20 some years or whatever. So I wasn't that dependent on it, but especially for people who are starting out, the important thing is to get it out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you get it out there.
Yeah. Just make it out, make it public, put yourself out there for sure. Tell everyone where they can get the new Kickstarter. I know you got a web address for this. That's actually very smart and very, efficient way to do this.
Well, I learned something with Megalopolis. Leaving Megalopolis was running whatever year it was like in June.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple months later, I'm like, gee, I probably should register the domain name, leavingmegalopolis.com. I had the web guy who built my web page. I asked him to look it up. Somebody had grabbed it in June while the campaign was going. Then a little time after that, I started getting emails. He wanted to sell it to me. Fortunately, he hadn't done .net, so I grabbed .net, and then I just said no to him. And about 6 months later, my web guy says, "Hey, .com's available again." It costs like what, $12 a year to park a web address.
Yep.
So now any projects I do, I immediately register .com and .net.
That's great.
So for this Kickstarter, nedlordofthepit.net. It's .net. We'll take them right to the Kickstarter.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, Jim, it is a pleasure to have you on. And like I said, complete transparency. I loved the book, man. I was so when you were like, "Hey, I'm kickstarting it," I'm like, "Great," because I was kind of pissed that it ended, and I don't know, I'm like, I want the next, I want the next one. So that's always, it's a good pissed off. I was like, "It's over, damn it!" and then I read the little
Louise
backup.
Simonson said when I sent her the PDF for the review, and it wasn't even final. She goes, "What do you mean to be continued?"
Yeah. How dare you? How dare you? But no, I've already backed the book, and I'm excited for volume 2, and just in general, thank you for all the great work you've done for me over the years as well too, and it is always truly appreciated. So
we will keep doing it.
Awesome, and we get to go to shows now too.
Yeah, I went to my first this past weekend.
I can't wait. I can't wait to get back.
Well,
Jim Calafiore.
Wait, hold on, sorry.
That's it. It was Garden State Comic Fest, one of the smaller shows. It used to actually be at the Menin Arena, which was a hockey rink.
Wow.
And they had 2 hockey rinks. One was cleaned out, so I guess that was the rollerbladers, and the other side had the ice. And a lot of the vendors would be standing on boards on the ice and getting cold.
Oh my God.
But it was a good show. Walt showed up. Simonson showed up.
Nice.
Hildebrand showed up. A lot of artists showed up.
It was a good turnout.
Well, this time it was in Jersey Gardens Mall.
Okay.
Oh.
What used to be the Century 21 store.
Okay.
And the funniest thing was a lot of the displays were still up. So people were like sitting under handbags.
Wow.
It was good. It felt good to be out. Friday was surprisingly heavier than I expected Friday to be. So it was a nice show. And I know
there are a lot of folks who are pent up and can't wait to get out. Like, I think New York Comic Con is going to be pretty like gangbusters. I know they had originally announced, just way back before the vaccine, really, that it would be like a hybrid. I kind of have a feeling it's not going to be limited capacity. I feel like they'll be at max capacity as long as things can, continue the way they are. So
yeah, I'm vaccinated, but my world has changed now. I mean, I've been permitted for a while, and now I'm doing this. I got a store appearance in Virginia.
Oh wow!
In a month. Yeah, I have a retailer level on the Kickstarter.
Okay,
and it doesn't go really well because retailers are really seem to be afraid of Kickstarter or angry at Kickstarter or whatever. And I always say, just check with your regulars. There's people who know my stuff from Secret Six, from Aquaman. And this guy in Virginia, that's what he does. And he pledged for 30 books.
Oh, that's great.
So I said, dude, I'm coming down.
That's great.
Do an appearance. That's
fantastic. Well, good luck to you on the Kickstarter. I know you had a very strong opening, and I have no doubt you'll be fun, and then you'll have to
got to keep working it.
Do the stretch goals, which are always that's a whole
no
other
mugs with no mugs.
Oh my!
I want mugs. Damn it! Now I want my mug.
No mugs, no t-shirts.
No mugs, no t-shirts.
Jim Calafiore, nedlordofthepit.net. Go back to Kickstarter. It's a great book. Get volume 1 if you haven't already read it or picked it up. And we will talk soon.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right. When we come back, we will put a bow on tonight's episode. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. I want to thank Jim for jumping onto the show tonight. Go check out nedlordofthepit.net and definitely back his book. Thanks to Hassan for his wonderful rogue rage, which was a quasi-positive one somewhere in there. It was good. This is progress, Hassan. That's what I like to talk about. That's what I like to say.
Condescension, my favorite, my favorite bouquet.
I heard good. And next week we will be talking Loki, episode 2. How far along to rewriting the MCU are we? Is it just going to be fun to see Tom Hiddleston in a suit? All these burning questions and more. And we're going to have actor Jason Tobias on talking about, he was in Justified. He's in a bunch of TV shows. He's got a new movie coming out. We're going to be able to interview him as well. We'll see you guys next week. Rogue Wave.